Why do we sing Take Me Out to the Ball Game when we're already there? Kind of redundant, don't you think? One of the most valuable lessons that I have ever learned is that dialing in a good metal guitar tone is not about gain at all. Really what it's about is EQing, is partially attitude and playing style, and and EQing it yourself right to where you sit in the mix where you're supposed to. I'll tell you what prompted me to make this video. I saw somebody post in one of the metal guitar groups on Facebook, and he posted something to the effect of what's everybody's favorite heavy amp. So basically the guy was looking for a new amp, and he said he specifically he said, I want crushing high gain. Now, before I get any further into this, I want to make clear that this video is not about trash talking, high gain or, high gain tones or anything like that. I love high gain amplifiers. I absolutely love them. I love high gain amps. I actually really, really like high gain tones, even though I don't use them as often as I used to. There is nothing wrong with liking a high gain tone, but there seems to be a myth out there among metal players that it's necessary to sound heavy. And I strongly disagree. Listen to pretty much any Megadeth record, and they don't, Dave Mustaine and the boys have never, ever, whichever lead guitar player you're talking about, whichever era, really none of them have ever used a ton of gain. Dave Mustaine in particular is pretty subdued, his gain levels, that is. But I don't think there's any arguing that Megadeth are one of the greatest metal bands, of all time. Same thing could maybe also be said for these fine folks. The guys in Iron Maiden have never used a ton of gain either. There's a lot of examples of great, all-time great metal bands that didn't run their rigs with the gain on 10. Now, the track that you just heard a minute ago at the beginning of this video was recorded with a plug-in. I'm using Amplitude 5 here for this experiment. And the one that you just heard was with the gain set on 6, which is maybe a little bit more gain than I would normally dial in for myself. Maybe just a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. Still I thought was a pretty good sound. Now, what you just heard, this is IK Multimedia's Amplitude 5. This is the latest one that just came out. This, of course, is their model, or their virtual model, virtual footprint, if you will, of an Engel Powerball. Engel Powerball, of course, whether you're talking about the real one or a plug-in, it's one of the heaviest amps out there. And, what you see is what you get. I've got, pretty much all the high gain features, functions, etc., turned on. And there is where my gain was set on the track that you just heard. So, here's what we are going to do. We are going to turn that down to about 2. So we're going to turn the gain down and then basically plug that right back into the exact same mix that you just heard. Everything in this track is the same, with the exception of the gain level on the guitar. And there's a cut, and the level of the guitar itself is also adjusted just slightly because backing off the gain does also decrease the output a little bit. So I had to compensate for that. But the level adjustment here is very, very slight. The main adjustment is the main difference that you're about to hear is the gain, and matter of fact, is the only difference. You're even about to watch the same video clip. Does it sound different? Yeah, of course it does. But is it still a good sounding metal tone? Personally, I thought so. And again, this may be a little bit of an extreme example, and that's okay. This is again, probably a little, less that I would dial in for myself. To be clear, if it were me, I would probably bump it up a little bit more, maybe somewhere halfway between what you just heard between those two tracks. Tell you what, just for kicks, let's go back here to Mr. Engel Powerball, and again, let's crank it. Let's run it on 10. See just how heavy this thing is. Again, a slight level adjustment just to compensate for the the additional output that is getting from the gain dimed. But let's hear what that same track and that same mix sound like with the gain in full tilt, just for kicks. The thing with using a lot of gain is there comes a point that you start to lose a lot of note definition. And if you're particularly if you're a really, really skilled lead guitar player and you play really, really fast and and you're a scale wizard and all that stuff. Shredders in particular don't like to lose note definition. And I think that you will find that most of your favorite guitar players out there, as I mentioned earlier, don't use as much gain as we oftentimes like to think that they do. I personally have found that I have become a better guitar player just by turning the gain down, because not only does it improve my note definition, but improved note definition also doesn't hide my mistakes like I was used to and forced me to learn to correct them. So that is definitely one advantage to using less gain. Again, to be clear, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with using more gain or less gain or whatever amount of gain out there that may be your favorite. Nothing wrong with any of it at all. I just wanted to make the point that, a good heavy metal guitar tone is not necessarily about where the gate is set on the amplifier or the pedal or the overdrive, whatever it may be. It's not about gain. There's a lot more important things to it than that. And I encourage you to read through the comments section of this video because I anticipate a lot of different comments, with a lot of different opinions. People sharing which one of these three examples was their favorite. And, and that's not to say that any of them are wrong. They're not. None of this is wrong. This is just, a different, I just wanted to share a different way of looking at, at dialing in a good rock / metal guitar tone, and my take on it. So I have found has worked for me. So I hope you found this video helpful. I hope you found it informative. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you have not already. Again, as I mentioned before, please leave a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video.